So this is a special recording, and I've said this in other recordings, but I want to say it here because it's really super obvious when you get into this parsha and when you get to the next parsha. So the Torah is very repetitive, and there's this idea out there in the world that the Torah was not written by Moses Rabbeinu, or it wasn't written during the time. There was no Moses Rabbeinu, and there was no Avram, and there was no, the story was written later, and it was like made up, and it was made up to justify the conquest of Israel and whole King David thing. King David didn't exist. So there's this hypothesis out there that there was groups of people that wrote the Torah called JEP&D. And I won't go into what JEP&D stand for, but really that there's like these four groups of people that wrote different sections of Torah, and then they interwove it together. This is called the documentary hypothesis, right? And it's like this, that there was editors, and then it was edited. It's all, academics and people studying this. It's learned in university. I even learned it at university. It's taught in most places in the world, and a lot of people accept it, and they say, makes sense, right? The Torah is contradictory. It doesn't make sense. And why is, wait a minute. I just have like a little thing I want to say about this. Why would the Torah be written? Why would they leave why would they leave these verses in? This last section that I just read, very repetitive. If there was really editors, and it was really JEP&D, there's these four groups, and there was one maybe master, the editor-in-chief, however these people who came up with this theory, they don't really answer a lot of these questions. They don't even ask these questions. But I'm going to ask the question, a really hard question, which is, why didn't they take this out? Why couldn't they just said, they didn't have to repeat it like this. The Torah doesn't have to be so repetitive. All these verses could have just been written in a way that would have summarized everything that happened, and it could have just said, like, oh, by the way, every day that the number of bulls was reduced, and it didn't need to repeat every single verse like this and count down every day. If the Torah was really edited and written by editors, they would have taken this out. It's just plain and simple. They would have edited it out. So if you really are into this theory, please explain this question. I want to hear an answer. I really do. I really want to hear an answer to this question, because people like accept the documentary hypothesis like a religion. They're like, oh yeah, like those guys are like, they're university professors and archaeologists, and they really are smart people. And I'm not dismissing the fact that these are really smart people who wrote, came up with this theory and came up with this whole idea that the Bible was written later. Like, I'm assuming they're really great people and really maybe very learned people, like, right? And some of them have a lot of degrees and know multiple languages, and they know a lot of Rashi, and they know Hebrew. They know Hebrew better than me. And they're archaeologists and historians, and they've really thought about it, and they put a lot of energy into this. But I just want to know one thing, like, why isn't this section taken out? Just answer that question. So that's the end of this special recording. I hope someday somebody will have the answer to my question.